B'shus kol HaKol HaKodesh hazeh, we try and learn together Sugya HaChona for Rosh Hashanah. Before we actually get involved in the Sugya of Tkiat Shofar, a word or two about Rosh Hashanah itself. It's not so long till Rosh Hashanah. And then we all get together and we say, HaEysonim, today is the birthday of the world. Hayom Yamid B'mishpat Kol Yitzurei Elam HaKadosh Baruch Hu places us all in judgment. Im Kebanim, Im Ka'avodim. Which many of us imagine that this means Im Kebanim, Im Ka'avodim is an introduction to the continuation Im Kebanim Rachamenu. However, the Kadakemach and other Mefarshim say that this is not what it means. Hayom Yamid B'mishpat. On Rosh Hashanah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to place and judge each one of us. What will the judgment be? Im Kebanim, Im Ka'avodim. Are we worthy of the title that we are Bonim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Bonim atim l'Hashem Elokeichem? Or Im Ka'avodim? Or perhaps my conduct is only worthy of the title Avodim, I'm a servant of Hashem, and not Bonim. The Ben Ish Chai, when he came to this part of the davening, he broke down in tears. Me'ema Sadin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is deciding Im Kebanim, Im Ka'avodim. What's the definition? How do we become Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem? Says the pasuk in Mishlei, B'ni im tikach amorai. Hashem says to Klal Yisrael, when are you called my son? Im tikach amorai, if you take my words of Torah and you learn my Torah. A yid who keeps Taryag mitzvahs, and he's a good yid, and he puts on tefillin, and he does chesed, and he does lots of wonderful things, he's a wonderful Eved Hashem. But Im Kebanim, when are you elevated to that prestigious title of Im Kebanim? That's B'ni Im Tikach Amorai. If you take the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says the Medrash, Ei Mosai Atem Kuruyim Bonim, when are you called Bonim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Im Tikach Amorai. If you take the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you learn and you learn again and you learn another sugya and another sugya. You precious friends, mishtatfim in these shurim, one after the other from other than myself, wonderful Magidei Shia. These are the Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. Im tikach amorai. Every opportunity to chap another Shia, that's B'ni Im tikach amorai. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'ni Im chacham libcha. If you're a chacham, because you learn my Torah, Yismach libi gam oni. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm learning the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eigen Torah. That's the zechus which each and every one of you brings to the Yom Adin. B'ni Im tikach amorai. You will be zeicher to be called Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. And one more point before we start in our sugya. If we're talking about B'ni, and we're talking about Im Kebanim, there's a higher level, an even higher title. And the pasuk says, Habein Yakir li Ephraim. There's a Ben Yakir, a beloved son, more than a regular son, over and above a Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. There's a B'ni, there's a Ben Yakir li Ephraim, midei dabri boy. Every time I speak about him, Zocher es kerenu oid, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I remember him. Who is the Ben Yakir, Meir Rabbeisai? If we are all Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem, if we are all brothers and we all feel for one another and we all mishtatef in Shurei Torah, who is the Ben Yakir li Ephraim, says the Chofetz Chaim. The Ben Yakir is the one who helps others to learn Torah. Our wonderful friends whom we respect so greatly in the Torah part of Agudas Yisrael, this convention and this part which is Ma'oidet Shurei Torah and is headed by a few very unique individuals. These are the Ben Yakir li Ephraim, Midei Dabri Boy. Every time HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks about them, Zocher es Keren Oid, in the name of all the Mishtatfim, we wish our very special directors and heads of the Torah Project Commission, Hatzlocha, both in their Abotzas Torah and in their own personal lives in the coming year, Torch Sha'ar Klal Yisrael. Meir Rabbi say, we want to focus together on the sugya, the mitzvah, of tkiat shofar. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah here something called a trua. How do I know 3 times a trua? Because it says in the Torah 3 times trua. Yom trua, zikron trua, vavatim shofar trua. And the Torah means each one of these you need to do. You need to blow 3 times a trua. Great. That's 3 koilas. Says the Gemara, you haven't done your mitzvah deraisa yet. We learn from other psukim, each trua needs a tkiya before it and a tkiya after. That either. Here we learn that we were in the middle of the sugya, 3 truas, and each one needs a tkiya before it. That's it. Says the Gemara, we're not quite sure what is this coil that the Torah says trua. Is it what we call a trua? Is it what we call a trua? You need to blow 3 times a trua. So we were saying that the Torah is machayev 3 truas, and each one needs its tkiya before and its tkiya after, which is 9 koilas. Says the Gemara, we're not sure what the Torah means when it says trua. Is it what we call a trua, what we call a shvarim, or what we call a shvarim trua? It says 3 times tkiya, trua, tkiya. But we don't know whether the trua of the Torah is a trua or a shvarim trua. Therefore, we need 3 times tkiya, trua, tkiya, 3 times tkiya, shvarim, tkiya, and 3 times tkiya, shvarim, trua, and tkiya. This is what's known in the world as blowing 30 koilas. Why 30? Because you got 3 times tashrat with a shvarim trua, that makes 12. 3 times tashat with a shvarim makes another 9. And 3 times with a trua is another 9. That makes altogether 30 koilas. That's the mitzvah deraisa. So far is Pashut. Comes the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, in Daf Tezayin, and the Gemara says, Lama toikim v'chayzrim v'toikim. Why do we blow 30 koilas before Shemona Esra? These are known as tekiyas to Meyushav. Minadin, you're allowed to sit then because it's before Shemona Esra. And then we go and blow again tekiyas to Ma'umad in Chazar Sashat. You blow 30, you've done your mitzvah. You're covered according to all opinions when you blow 30. Why do you need to blow twice? Tekiyas to Meyushav and tekiyas to Ma'umad. And the Gemara answers very famously, La'arve v'sasoten. What does this mean, La'arve v'sasoten? Either it means La'arve v'sasoten, that the Soten thinks that Mashiach is coming, or the Soten sees that we're Mahadrin and we repeat the mitzvah so many times, and how can he say unkind things about us when we are such special people? Or the word Soten here is not referring to the Soten the way we refer to the Soten as the one who's Mekatrig in Shemayim, but Soten means the Yetzer Hara within each and every one of us who tries to get us to do Averis. And La'arvus Soten means that the person should be inspired to leave his Averis and do tshuva. That's the 3 perushim, main perushim in the Gemara, La'arvus Soten. So we blow before Shemona Esra, and we blow in Shemona Esra, and that brings us, in today's world, to 60 koilas. We have 30 before Shemona Esra, and 30 in Chazar Sashat. Tosfos brings from the Aruch. The Aruch is one of the Rishonim, and the Sefer Aruch says that our minhag is that it doesn't suffice the 9 of the Torah, and the 30 to make sure you've done all the suffix of the Torah, and it doesn't suffice the 60 le'ava v'sasoten. We have a minhag that we blow 100. Why 100? Because the mother of Sisera, she cried 100 cries when she's looking out the window, looking for her beloved son Sisera. And the Pasuk says over there, Ba'ad hachaloin nishkofa, she's looking out of the window, vatayabev aim Sisera. the mother of Sisera Vatayabiv, she cried. And the translation of the word Yom Teruah in the Targum is Yom Yabova. So the word Teruah is translated Yabova. And we know it says Vatayabiv by the mother of Sisera, and says the Sefer Aruch, she cried 100 cries. Therefore, we should blow the shofar 100 blasts of the shofar. So we need to add another 40. At this point, the Minhagim diverge. Nusach Sfad blows, where do you get your extra 40? Nusach Sfad blows an extra 30 in the quiet Shemoneh Esrei. So for them, they have 30 before Shemoneh Esrei, 30 in quiet Shemoneh Esrei, 30 in Chazoras Hashatz, and they need to add another 10 at the end of davening. Nusach Ashkenaz doesn't blow in quiet Shemoneh Esrei. So Nusach Ashkenaz is only 30 before Shemoneh Esrei, 30 in Chazoras Hashatz, and they add another 40 at the end of davening, depending on exactly which shul you daven in, at which Kaddish you blow 30 and which Kaddish you blow 10. The Tzad HaShavah, the common denominator of all of us in today's world, is that we all go to shul, we should be zocheh to all go to shul, and we hear 100 koros because of the mother of Sisera. That's the Aruch. One more point before we get involved in Kashas and Tirutzim is a Machlokes Rishonim on the blowing of the Shvarim Truah. The Gemara tells us clearly we need to blow 3 times with a Truah, 3 times with a Shvarim, and 3 times Shvarim Truah. Why, says the Gemara? Because some people, when they cry Shvarim, a yelping, 3 yelps, and then a stuttered cry of a Truah. So therefore we need to blow 3 times Tashrat. There comes a Machlokes Rabbeinu Tam and the Rosh. What does it mean exactly, Tashrat? Rabbeinu Tam, he holds that Tashrat means B'shtei Neshimas, blow a Shvarim, take a breath, and then a Truah. The Rosh, he holds Tashrat, the Shvarim and the Truah are B'neshima Achas. Don't take a break for a breath in between, blow Shvarim followed immediately by a Truah. A Machlokes Rishonim. So what do we do about this Machlokes Rishonim when we actually come to blow? So the Ramah has it easy. The Ramah paskins like the Rabbeinu Tam, who holds 2 Neshimas, and the Ramah in Krakow, he blows Shtei Neshimas. The Shulchan Aruch, he's not so sure about this. And the Shulchan Aruch says, if we had to decide whether we're going to blow 1 Neshima or 2 Neshimas, we would have to be machriya on this Machlokes Rishonim, Rabbeinu Tam and the Rosh. Says the Shulchan Aruch, we happen to have a convenient arrangement because anyway the Gemara says that we blow 30 before Shemoneh Esrei and 30 in Chazoras Hashatz. One group is for the mitzvah deraisa and the other group la'arv v'sasotin. Says the Shulchan Aruch, if you're anyway blowing 60, then you can conveniently extricate yourself from a Machlokes Rishonim, and you'll blow the first 30 b'neshima achas, so the Rosh will be happy, and you'll blow the next 30 in Chazoras Hashatz b'shtei neshimas, and the Rosh will be happy, and Shalom Al Yisrael, you got yourself out of the Machlokes. That's the HaRav of the Shulchan Aruch. I can't call it HaRav, the Eitzah, the suggestion of the Shulchan Aruch, make everyone happy. In spite of the fact that the Ramah says that he paskins everything in Shtei Neshimas, the Mishabura brings Minhag HaOlam. We follow the HaRav, the suggestion of the Shulchan Aruch, and we blow 30 b'neshima achas and 30 b'shtei neshimas, and everyone is happy. So far, it looks like everyone is happy with us. Now comes a Welt Kasha. This Welt Kasha is known in the name of the Aderes, in a number of his Sfarim, but he's not the only one who had this ha'ara. And the ha'ara is very simple. You and me are brought up to count koilos, and we count like this. A tkiya is 1, a shvarim is 1, and a tkiya is another 1. So tashrat times 3 makes 9, and tarat times 3 makes 9. What about tashrat? So we count tkiya, Shvarim, Trua, Tkiya. That's 4. So 3 times Tashrat makes 12. That way, we call 3 times Tashrat, Tarat. We call it 30. So we count in our machzon. We say, I blew 30 before Shemona Esrei. I blew 30 in Chazaros Hashat. And this way we calculate our tkiyos. Says the Aderes, it's not so simple the way we are brought up to count. The Torah actually says that this calculation, this that we add up our kolos and we call them 30, says the Torah, that's only according to the opinion of the Rishonim that the Shvarim and the Trua are blown separately. Shtei Neshimas. So if it's Shtei Neshimas, then it's 2 kolos. So then it adds up to 30. The Torah brings from the Ritzgeis. The Ritzgeis blew, after making the brachas, he blew exactly like we blow. 3 times Tashrat, 3 times Tashat, 3 times Tarat. And the Ritzgeis writes, Nimtza, that you blew 27 kolos. How come? Says the Torah, very simple. Because the Ritzgeis blew b'neshima achas. So if you blow a shvarim and a trua b'neshima achas, it's called 1 koil. So like a shvarim is called a koil, not 3 koilos. If you hold shvarim trua is shtei neshima, is neshima achas, then it's again 1 koil. Oy ba'azoi, says the Ritzgeis, that's called 27 koilos. Now, it doesn't really make a difference to us. Whether you call it 27 or you call it 30, it's exactly the same. Says the Aderes, where's the kasha? The kasha is on our minig. We tell ourselves that we are blowing 100 koilos. Who told us 100? The Aruch. Why 100? Because the mother of Sisra cried 100 koilos. Says the Aderes, if you're called the Ramah, if you're called Rabbeinu Tam, and whenever you blow a Shvarim Trua, you blow 2 Neshimas, then what we have done is great. We blow 100 koilos. 30 before Shemona Esrei, 30 in Chazaros Hashat, we add another 40, sum total is 100. If you blow them all in Shtei Neshimas, every Tashrat. Says the Aderes, we, the Mishnah Brura, our minig, is like the Shulchan Aruch, that we blow some of our Tashrats Neshima Achas, and some of them Shtei Neshimas. Those which are B'Neshima Achas, what did the Torah tell us? That if they are B'Neshima Achas, that's called 1 koil. If that's the case, then when we have finished blowing all koilos in shul, and it says in the machzah, tkiya, shvarim, trua, tkiya, and you count 100 koilos, that's all true. But since we blow some of them b'neshima achas, halachically, neshima achas is called 1 koil. If that's the case, you haven't got 100 koilos at the end of the day. That's the kasha of that eretz. Now, we have to explain. He doesn't have a kasha on the Shulchan Aruch or on the Ramah. The Shulchan Aruch, who says, split your koilos between 1 koil and 2 koilos, neshima and 2 neshimas, he doesn't have 100 koilos. We want to be yoitza the shitta of the Rosh and the Rabbeinu Tam. So we are blowing like the Rosh, some of our koilos, the neshima achas, very nice. Says that there, if that's the case, when you're finished your 40 at the end of davening over there in the last Kaddish, you should blow more in order to supplement your number of 100. And nobody does this. A kasha on us, on the Mishnah Brura. If you're telling me to blow 100, and you're telling me to blow some of them in Neshima Achas and Shtei Neshimas, and the Torah says that Neshima Achas is called 1 koil, then we don't walk away from shul with 100 koilos. That's the kasha. And by extension, there's no point blowing to get to 96 koilos or 94 koilos if you didn't get to 100. So you should have to blow more. We're going to try and find for the kasha of the Aderes at Mokim Sheyodeinu Magas. To explain to Femfa, we need a few akdamas. We mentioned before the Gemara says that we blow 30 and we blow again. But when you blow 30, you've done your mitzvah deraisa. So why? Lama toikin v'chayzim v'toikin. Why do we have before Shemoneh Esrei and again in Chazor Hashatz? Says the Gemara, le'arvev es hasotin. Whatever the pshat in le'arvev es hasotin is, the way we would translate the Gemara would be blow 30 immediately after the bracha to do your mitzvah deraisa, and then again in Chazor Hashatz, blow again le'arvev es hasotin. And this is the way the Rambam learns, and the Rif learns, and the Milchamos. In fact, they bring a minig that in some kelas they had a minig that immediately after the brachas before Shemoneh Esrei they blew 30. In the Chazor Hashatz they didn't do a full 30. Frek the Rambam, but the Gemara says toikin v'chayzrim v'toikin, so you should blow 30 in Chazor Hashatz. How could some people have such a minig? Says the Rambam, doesn't matter, because the tkias of Chazor Hashatz are anyway only la'av v'sasotin. So la'av v'sasotin, that he sees that we're blowing more and he thinks Mashiach is coming and we're special people, mahadrim and mitzvahs. For that you don't need another 30. So they had a minig that didn't blow another 30. That's the Rambam and the Rif. However, Tosfos in Psachim Kuftes Vav and the Ran, they say nishtazeh. They say, if the Torah gave you a mitzvah of Tkias Shofar, and we learn from Psukim, Malchias, Achroinas, Shofras, to say Psukim from Malchias, Achroinas, and Shofras, then the mitzvah deraisa of blowing Shofar, that should be done in Chazor Hashatz. Malchias and blow, Achroinas and blow, Shofras and blow. That's when you're doing your mitzvah deraisa. The Gemara asked the Kasha, why do you bother blowing before davening, before Chazor Hashatz, before Quiet Shemoneh Esrei? Why do you have the first tekiyas? And on that, the Gemara says, le'arvev es hasotin, you blow before Musaf. That's the way the Ran and Tosfos learn. It would seem that the Ran is the Shetosai. If you learn la'arn your mitzvah deraisa, why are you blowing again? It must be Mashiach came. Or why are you blowing again? You must be such special people, madrim and a madrin. So obviously, la'arvus hasotin is only in the second set of tekiyas. But the Ran learns that la'arvus hasotin doesn't mean the sotin in Shemayim. It means the Yetzer Hara in me. La'arvus hasotin, to inspire me to do tshuva. So the Ran learns that the inspiration is the first tekiyas. The mitzvah deraisa you're going to do in Chazor Hashatz, I'll say the brachas. The first tekiyas, those are the tekiyas which la'arvus hasotin to inspire me to do teshuva. That's the way the Ran and Tosfos learn the sugya. And Tosfos speaks out explicitly that you're making a bracha before Musaf, and you only be mekayem your mitzvah deraisa in Chazor Hashatz. But it doesn't matter, because you're actually going through the motions of blowing straight away as soon as you made your brachas, and then your bracha works later for your mitzvah deraisa. Das HaMishnah Brura in this complicated machlokes rishonim is extremely unclear, and we haven't got time now for a whole shir, an expanded shir about the opinion of the Mishnah Brura. But suffice it to say that the Mishnah Brura, on the face of things, it would seem that he passes like Tosfos and the Ran, that the main tekiyas are in Chazor Hashatz. The Mishnah Brura discusses, if I made a mistake, so we all know if the Baal Tekeh makes a mistake, then the makra makes me go back, blow again. And the Mishnah Brura discusses, is this necessary? Why? If I'm only blowing 30, I'm going to a lady's house, I'm blowing for her 30 kodas. So you need all those 30 to do your mitzvah deraisa. Of course, you make a mistake, you've got to repeat. But the Mishnah Brura wonders aloud, we blow anyway 30 before Musaf and 30 in Chazor Hashatz. So if he makes a mistake, you're blowing another 30 anyway. Says the Mishnah Brura, no. Wherever he makes a mistake, we'll make him go back. Why? Says the Mishnah Brura. Says the Mishnah Brura, the first 30, when you made a bracha on them, you're going to make a bracha, you've got to do them right. and the 13 Chazos HaShat, says the Mishnah Berurah, those are the Ikka Mitzvah. So if those are the Ikka Mitzvah, of course, you make a mistake. You got to blow again. You got to go back. So what do we see from the Mishnah Berurah? Evidently, the Mishnah Berurah paskins, like the Ran and the Tosfos, that La'arv v'Sasoten is the first 30. And the 13 Chazos HaShat, those are the Ikka Mitzvah D'Oraisa. So far, it's brilliant. Geschmack, sehr Geschmack. Now, I have to be Mekatzer because we don't have all that much time. Let's leave out a part which I would have liked to have spoken about and focus zero straight on the kasha on hand. One more nakuda, which is important for us to understand. We mentioned already a machlokes rishonim. Are you meant to blow neshima achas or shtei neshimas? Machlokes, the Rosh and Rabbeinu Tam. What is the machlokes, the Rosh and Rabbeinu Tam? So, the Rabbeinu Tam says, blow 2 neshimas. Take a breath between the shvarim and the trua. Why? Because the Gemara says that the reason for shvarim trua is because some people cry that way. Says the Rabbeinu Tam, nobody in the world cries a yelping shvarim and then a stuttered cry in one go, in one neshim. He cries a shvarim, and he catches his breath and he cries a trua. That's the way people cry. So then you got to blow shtei neshimas. That's the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. The Rosh HaRav says no. Neshima achas. Why neshima achas? Because the Torah calls it one koil. Torah says yom trua yelachem. It's a trua. So you got to make up your mind. A trua might be a trua, it might be a shvarim, it might be a shvarim trua. But whatever it is, the Torah calls it one koil. If it's one koil, it's got to be b'neshima achas. That's the opinion of the Rosh. So what's Rabbeinu Tam going to answer? What's the machlokes between the Rosh and Rabbeinu Tam? The Teretz Echor is there poshet. And the Teretz here gets to the crux of the issue in the basic understanding of what a trua is. The Torah HaKadosh says, Yom trua yi elochem. Blow a trua. Now, the Gemara says we don't know what a trua is. The Targum translates it as a Yom Yabava. So we see from the Targum that the Torah must have meant something which resembles cry. Okay, but we don't know what the Targum meant. Did the Targum mean a shvarim or trua, shvarim trua? So far, we could learn that when the Torah said trua, the Torah meant a particular sound. The Targum read out and translated it for our convenience as a Yom Yabava. Now, we go and we look in the dictionary. We want to know, what does the Torah mean? And the dictionary tells us it's a sound of crying. So, go ahead, you got to blow shvarim trua, shvarim trua. But the Torah per se is not interested in crying. The Torah has no interest in crying. The Torah meant trua. The Targum told us that that's a sound associated with crying. If that's the case, says the Rosh, the Torah says, Yom trua yi elochem, one coil of a trua. If you think it might mean shvarim trua, then you got to do shvarim trua, but neshima achas. What's Rabbeinu Tam say when he says shtei neshimas? Rabbeinu Tam says along the Shavuot. Rabbeinu Tam says the Torah didn't mean a coil of a trua. The Torah meant the sound of crying. That's what the Torah wants me to blow, not a trua. The Torah wants the sound of crying. So if people cry in shtei neshimas, and the Torah told me, blow the sound of a person who cries, the person who cries cries 2 separate things, a shvarim and a trua. Then that's what the Torah meant. So what's the machlokes, the Rosh and Rabbeinu Tam? The Rosh holds that the Torah had a particular sound in mind. If the Torah had in mind a shvarim trua, then it was a shvar trua in one go. And that's what the Targum meant when he translated it as crying. Rabbeinu Tam holds no. The Torah wanted the sound of crying. That's what the Torah wanted me to do. So if people cry shvar trua in two goes, then that's the way you got to blow your shofar. Shtei neshimas. Let's bring some rayas that when the Torah says Yom Trua, the Torah wants the sound of crying. So the first raya is from a very famous opinion of Rav HaEysonim. Rav HaEysonim says he doesn't understand. Rabbi Vo says in the Gemara, we're not sure. Did the Torah mean you should blow a shvarim or a trua or shvarim trua? So therefore says Rabbi Vo, you should blow all of them. Fret Rav HaEysonim, Klal Yisrael wasn't born yesterday. How can it be? Go and ask. What did people blow last year and the year before that? Did they blow shvarim or trua or shvarim trua? Says Rav HaEysonim, Rabbi Vo made a census. He went around the shuls in Suram, Pumpadisa, and Ardor, and what did he find? Some people are blowing shvarim, others are blowing trua, and still others are blowing shvarim trua. Says Rav HaEysonim that all yoitza the mitzvah deraisa. You can be yoitza mitzvah deraisa with any of them. Why? Because they sound like crying. What was the takana of Rabbi Vo? He doesn't like the fact that the shul in Ardor blows this way and Surah blows that way. We want Klal Yisrael to be uniform. We want everyone doing the same thing. So therefore, Rabbi Vo made a takana. Since he saw some people blowing shvarim and trua and shvarim trua, blow them all. But you're really yoitz with any of them. Why? Because they're the sound of crying. That's raya number one. A much better raya to this is the Ritva. The Ritva asks the same kasha. How can it be that you don't know what the mitzvah of the Torah is? Shvarim or trua, shvarim trua. Says the Ritva, listen to an unbelievable chiddush of the Ritva. Says the Ritva, Rabbi Vo made a census. He went around. And you know what he heard? He heard some people in his generation are blowing a shvarim. But the Zakenim say that we remember when we were kids, they used to blow a trua. And you know why? Because in that generation, that's how people cried. Says Rabbi Vo, but there'll be a generation where people are going to cry like the sound of a shvarim trua. And in each generation, the Torah means blow the way people cry in that generation. So Rabbi Vo made a takana that we should blow every year all three options, shvarim and trua and shvarim trua, because each one of them in a different generation will be a kiyum of the mitzvah deraisa of trua. Al kaponim zachin ledin. What is the machloikas between Rabbeinu Tam and the Rosh? The Rabbeinu Tam says shtei neshimas, because crying is in two neshimas. What does the Rosh say? Neshima achas. Why? Because if the Torah told me blow a koil of a trua, and if the Torah meant shvarim trua, then that's called a koil. In the language of the Torah, that's called a koil. And in the language of the Torah, it has to be b'neshima achas. That's brilliant. Sehr geschmack. So the Maritz Geius and the Tur say, I blow straight after my bracha, and I blow 3 times tashat and tarat and tashrat. How many do I have? Says the Ritzgeus, you're discussing here a mitzvah of the Torah. As far as the mitzvah of the Torah is concerned, if you blow shtei neshimas, then you blew 30. If you blew neshima achas, because it's one coil in the eyes of the Torah, then you blew 27. 100% right. Now we move on, and we come to the Aruch. And the Aruch says, blow 100 koilos. He didn't say 100 koilos for the mitzvah of the Torah. What did he say? The Gemara says, la'arav v'sasotan, to eradicate the Yetzer Hara, to inspire a person to do tshuva. The Gemara says, with 60 koilos. Says the Aruch, no. I want a person to be aware of crying, not 30 times and not 60 times. I want you to remember the 100 cries of the mother of Sisera. and therefore you should blow 100 koilos. The Prisha adds to this, and he says that it's a better kiyum in the midst of the Torah. Torah says, Yom Yabava. The Torah wanted me to experience crying. The ultimate experience of crying is not just with 30, but if 100 cries, that's, so to speak, a hidur mitzvah in the mitzvah deraisa of the koilos of crying on Rosh Hashanah. So why are we trying to blow 100 koilos? Not because the 100 koilos of the Yom Teruah Yeh Lochem, of the mitzvah of the Torah. We're trying to get to the 100 cries of the mother of Sisra. If a person cries, and he cries Shvorim and Trua, as far as the cry goes, these are two separate things. Both Rabbeinu Tam and the Rosh agree that the person who cries a Shvorim, and separately a Trua. What's their machlokas? When the Torah says Yom Teruah, if the Torah called a Shvorim Trua, then says the Rosh that the Torah meant Neshima Achas. Says the Torah Ritzkeis, that's called in Torah language one koil. So in Torah language you have 27 koilos. But when you're trying to make 100 cries for the mother of Sisra, it doesn't make a difference whether you blew your Shvarim Trua as a Neshima Achas or Shtei Neshimas. It doesn't make a difference if you're Rosh or Rabbeinu Tam. If you're looking to tally 100 koilos for 100 cries of the mother of Sisra, then you have it. When your Shvarim is a person cries a Shvarim, and a Trua, a person cries a Trua, and then you have your 100 koilos. Says the Mishnah Brura, since the Mishnah Brura paskins, like the Ram, that the main tekias are the ones in Chazor Sashatz, and the ones before only la'arv v'sasatam. And what's la'arv v'sasatam? To inspire me to do tshuva, and built on that we have 100 koilos of the Aruch to inspire me further to do tshuva, to remember the cries of the mother of Sisra. If that's the case, says the Mishnah Brura, then you can blow 100 koilos, and you can blow some of them b'neshima achas. And when you're discussing the mitzvah of the Torah, you'll call them 27 koilos. And the very same koilos, when it comes to adding them up to 100, will be called two separate koilos, and we've been mekayim the orach of 100 koilos. B'shus kol hakol hakodesh hazeh, I would like to add one or two words about the orach. We are to blow 100 koilos to remember the cries of the mother of Sisra. Why? Because the Torah says Yom Teruah, and the Targum translates it as a Yom Yabava, and Yabava means to cry. And how do I know that Yabava means to cry? Because it says by the mother of Sisra, Ba'ad hachaloim nishkofa v'tiyabev eim Sisra. The mother of Sisra is standing by the window, she's looking for Sisra, and she's crying. There we are, we have somebody crying. And she cried 100 times. Frekter Bitzel Petterberger. He's got a cash on the Aruch, and on the Gemara, and on the Pasuk. We all know that crying is called in the Torah Bechia, to cry. So why does the Pasuk write by the mother of Sisra Vatiyabev? Could have said Vativka, she cried. More than that, the Targum translates Yom Teruah as a Yom Yabava. Why Yom Yabava? It's nowhere in the Torah does it translate crying as Yabava. Only by Yom Teruah on Rosh Hashanah. And there's only one place in Tanakh where we find this word, Vatiyabev, the mother of Sisra. And we need to blow 100 koilos as Aruch to remember the mother of Sisra. What's so important about this Rashanta, the mother of Sisra? Says Rabbi Tzvi Petterberger, a vort, $1 million this vort. Says Rabbi Tzvi, there's a big difference between Bechia and Yabava. If you look in the Pasuk in Shoftim and Perek Hey, what was going on over there? The mother of Sisra is looking out the window. He hasn't come. Why hasn't he come? Chochmois Soroi Seho. Her friends told her, you know why? Sisra's been incredibly successful. He's wiped out Klal Yisrael. He's conquered Eretz Yisrael. Your son has become the greatest warrior, the biggest general in the world. You've become the mother of the Emperor Sisera. You know why he's late? Because he's on a rampage. He's collecting spoil all the way around Judea. And the mother of Sisera says, maybe not. Maybe he hasn't come because he's been defeated. Maybe he's been killed. Maybe I've become the mother of a man who suffered an ignominious defeat at the hands of the Jews. And she doesn't know what lies ahead. Is it glory and fame and magnificence? Or is it a mapala of the greatest form? That's called vatayabev. If your foot hurts, it's called a bechia. If you stand at a crossroads and you don't know, shnei derachim lefonai, it might be magnificent and wonderful and beautiful, and it might chas v'shalom be a terrible time. That's called yabava. And when the Targum is looking for translation of the word Yom Teruah, he says Yom Yabava. And it's only found once in Tanakh by the mother of Sisera. It says the Aruch, I want you to remember the 100 koilos of the mother of Sisera, because that depicts the situation that we find ourselves in on the Yom Adin of Rosh Hashanah. When we cry on Rosh Hashanah, it's not a bechia vativke, it's a vatayabev. What lies ahead? We hope and we daven and we pray that we should be zeicha, it should be the most magnificent and incredible year lies ahead. Tavshin Pei Aleph should be a year of geula, of atzlacha, of parnasa, of gesund, of kituv and koltuv. And chas v'shalom, we have an idea of how difficult a year can look. That's vatyabev. These are the 100 cries that we want to and we need to remember on Rosh Hashanah. Meir HaEysonim. How did the Aruch know that the mother of Sisera cried 100 cries? Says the Sefer Manhig. There's two places where we find crying. One is the mother of Sisera, Vatiyabev, and the other one is a lady giving birth. Cholim kamav kira, the terrible pain of giving birth. And there it says, Mufurish in the Medrash Tanchuma, that a lady giving birth cries 100 cries. It says the Sefer Mani that the Aruch learned, if the cries of childbirth are 100 cries, then the cries of the mother of Sisera are 100 cries. Zok the Meshech Chochma, we blow the shofar and we say, Hayoim, today, HaRav's Olam, it's the birthday of the world. The world is being reborn today for the coming year. We're going through the pain of childbirth, the pangs of childbirth. Hayoim, today is the childbirth, is the birth of a new year. What sort of year, my Rabbi? It could be a year of Imkabonim. It could be the most magnificent year that we've ever had in our lives. And Chas V'Shalom, it could be in Kavodim. This is the Yom Adin. After we blow the truah of the 100 koilos of the mother of Sisera, we look at ourselves and we say, Ayoim, today, Haras Olam, the world is being born again anew. And this inspires us to tshuva. We, my Rabbi, stand before Rosh Hashanah. Before Rosh Hashanah, when we know what Midas Adin means. Before Rosh Hashanah, when we daven, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have inspired us. We have come to tshuva. Many, many, many wonderful Yidden have been mischazik and put in extra effort to learn Torah, to learn Torah when it's difficult, to do so many more mitzvahs, however difficult it's been. Klal Yisrael has risen to heights and has shown the magnificent qualities. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bench each and every one of us and all of Klal Yisrael, that he should judge us as Bonim Atim Lashem Aleikeichem. We should be worthy that the sun should be misarvav. We should be worthy that our koilos on Rosh Hashanah should herald the shofar shel Mashiach, and we shall meet, each and every one of us, with the Gula Shlema, B'mheira v'yameinu, amen.